everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
And I'm Wendy Yee.
Today we're talking about a canal that was built in Brandenburg between 1832 and 1837.
It's approximately 200 years after the concertos of Brandenburg.
Well, this is the Oranienburger.
Oranienburger? That's how I...
Oranienburger Kanal?
I apologize that we mispronounced the name of this game that no one's ever going to say. They're going to be like, do you want to play the two-player? Well, this is not the only two-player Rosenberg game.
How about the orange and yellow burger box?
There is a bit of orange here. This is a game from Uwe Rosenberg and Spielworks. Uwe Rosenberg is very famous for making great games. Feast for Odin, Caverna. Spielworks is famous for making ugly games.
They succeeded.
The combo is here. This, like I said, it's a 1 to 2 player game. I've only played it with 2. You played it with 1, right?
I did both counts, yeah.
All right. So Chris is going to show us how to play it. We'll be right back.
Here's a bit of a simplified setup for Oranienburger Kanal. This is an individual player's area, a resource wheel, and a development board. I haven't set up the second one simply for table space so you can see the cards. This over here is the central area. This is the worker placement board where you'll be taking the discs to activate them on your turn. And buildings, these cards will be constructed onto your player board and then surrounded by different types of paths, canals, roadways, railways, and dirt paths. When they're completely surrounded, they'll activate their effect on here, or when two bridges connect buildings to other buildings, then that effect will activate a second time, and you're trying to maximize that over an undetermined number of rounds. There are buildings here that are green for the first level, orange for the second, and blue for the third level. These replenish at the end of each round after they're constructed, and when the first stack runs out, you'll then start pulling from the second stack, at which point you'll have 5 cards in the market instead of 4. When this depletes, they'll now have 6 cards in the market instead of 5, and when this depletes, that will trigger the end of the game. And you see, as these card stacks deplete, you get stronger or alternative actions that you can take in these spots. So let's talk about what kind of the game flow is in Oranienburger Kanal. On your turn, if you're the first player, marked by the red disc here, you'll take the stack of discs and you'll set it onto any spot. These bottom ones here behave very simply. You get a lot of resources. This is the resource wheel over here where you keep track of how many you have of each type. Wood, in this case, I have 4 wood because it is 4 steps away from this dividing line right there. And you can see these numbers written on the inside wheel. So the basic resources get higher as you go to the left, counterclockwise. These advanced resources, you have more of them as you move them clockwise away from this measuring stick over here. So as you take the action here, I get some resources. The next player would go, leave the bottom disc behind, showing that that space is blocked, and then they would move their disc to another, move the stack to another area. This player would, in this case, get 4 clay, and they would indicate that by moving the clay on their thing here. Over here, if I have enough resources, can come to this spot, which is going to allow me to buy cards. When you go to a spot that has coins on it, by the way, you take those coins, and these are points at the end of the game, or currency you can spend. This action here allows me to buy a card from the lineup over here, so I could pay for this one, because this one costs 1 wood, or this one costs a wood, 2 clay, and $1, 1 coin. So I could build this one out here by paying the correct resources, and then I can place this anywhere onto my board that I want. There are no restrictions for that, but as you surround it with different road paths, you'll activate it. Some of these cards have bonuses that are dependent on the types of pathways that are around it. 2 dirt paths and 1 or 2 canals, if that's what surrounds this at any point during a player's turn, they can then activate this. So that's the point of building these, is that they're worth the points written on them, and they give you these abilities. This is kind of how you can get the advanced resources. So because I met all of these conditions, I can get 2 brick, and I can get 3 ore. There you go. The next player would go, this space gives you resources of your choice. These spaces up here allow you to either build cards, build more pathways, dirt and roads, or to build the other types of pathways, any type. That includes canals and railways. The player aid here shows you all of the different costs to build the different types of roads. They cost different mixes of these resources here. Now, at any time on your turn, you're allowed to pay coins, pay thalers, to buy more of the basic resources. Or, if you have these basic resources further away from the measuring point over here, I could pay 2 coins in order to advance this one step anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. The point of that being, I now have functionally spent one of each of the 3 basic resources to get one of both of the advanced resources, because now you see these numbers have increased here and decreased over there. After players have taken all the actions for a round, of which there are 5, first player will pass to the other player. You will refill the market to the requisite number of cards, and then play will continue with the other player going first. You also reseed the top actions over here with a coin each, and the spaces that weren't chosen each get a coin as well. And then play continues alternating until players have depleted the blue, the 3rd stack of cards, at which case you'll go to endgame scoring. Players are going to earn points in various different ways. First of all, every card that is built onto the board is worth its shown points. All of your coins are 1-to-1 points. Certain card effects earn you these prestige markers, which are just victory points, but they can't be spent like coins. Your advanced resources, your iron and your brick, are each worth 1 point each. Whichever of the basic resources you have the fewest of is worth points, in this case 1, because my smallest resource is clay. Every of the non-dirt path types, these pathways that I've built out here, each canal and this railroad, are functionally worth a point. And then you will lose a point for every uncovered pathway that you have on the board, and the player with the higher points wins.
Now, whenever it comes to one of these Rosenberg games, like, what's the catch? And he definitely borrows from himself. Here he has a wheel that goes around, which is similar to Oranienburger.
Oranienburger and
Glass Road.
Glass Road, yeah.
And this wheel's slightly different in that there's, by clicking down on 3 of your resources, you make 2 others?
2 of them, yeah.
2 other resources, which is a neat idea in theory. And after a while, I just kind of was like, it works, it works. Mostly it would be like, I need to make sure I have enough of these resources at the end of a round so I can click it down and get 2 of the other. But do I need them?
Yeah, it's like a fun, like, whoo, yeah, I did it. I need 1 more wood to build that building.
That did happen a couple of times. I enjoy the resource management because you know it's always better to get those other ones because wood is
but it's not always.
But wood is so cheap. So it may take an action, you get 4. But this game is not, you're not really feeling rushed on time.
I think it depends maybe on the tempo, because I've played some games where it moves a little quicker. You can build maximum of 2 cards per round, and if one player doesn't, then the game will kind of extend by nature of it. And so it drags a little bit when that happens.
I have several problems with the game, but one of the problems I have is with these resources, I still don't know the value of anything.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so when it comes to, I know that canals and railroads are better than streets, which are better than roads, or whatever they are.
Yeah,
right?
cobblestone versus dirt.
Just a path, the basic dirt paths.
I get that. The other resources, I don't know, and it really bugs me because so many cards are do this to get money, do this into this, change this into that. And I think it's very oblique in this game how well you're doing or not doing.
I guess I just am trusting the designers that if I build a card and I make it happen, that it's going to be worth my time.
Yeah, but you're picking which card to build. So if you're just picking ones you can build or ones that work with maybe a set of canals that you already have out there, you're not making any really interesting choices. You're just doing what works. And I want to make good choices, but I look at the cards, I'm like, that one seems bad. But I don't know if it's bad because the math is so hidden. I always argue about when the stuff's too obvious. I think it's too hidden here. But it's not hidden behind theme. It's hidden behind just, I don't know what everything's worth.
There is a single resource in here, whatever, I can't even describe it, is it ore?
Yeah.
That doesn't even, you don't spend it for anything other than moving the wheel. And occasionally on a rare card. It's mostly just to spin the wheel. Which is interesting.
But that would be good information for them to mention.
Or you can see at the top of the cost of all the cards that you can build that it doesn't show that or symbol on there.
It doesn't exist, yeah.
Right. I had played this a little while ago solo, and then played it with Wendy recently too. And the first time we pulled it out, again, I was like, Wendy, I don't know what this resource does. and in our game of it, because in that particular game of it, a card came up. 1 or 2 cards came up where you could spend it to get some points. There's also points in the game versus coins, which are all worth 1 point at the end of the game. But coins you can spend, but points you can't. But then, in the B deck, there's a card where you can spend a point to get a benefit. I think we're agreeing in that like some of the value of things is too oblique, and I also think it's a little bit too random because you don't know if that card is going to come out later that makes ore worth it. I got a card early in the game that gives me 5 ore both times I activate it. Is that going to mean anything? I don't know. It depends on what cards got shuffled into the deck.
Yeah, if I compare this to like his other games, so we talk about these decks and deck A, deck B, and there's more decks you can buy. But in, let's say, Agricola. In Agricola, the cards are shuffled that come up those worker placement spaces. And you flip them over as they're revealed. And you're like, oh, sheep came up early this game, or whatever it is. But I know the cards are going to come up. The cards may not come out. I may build a card in this one that's all about canals and wait for more cards that work with canals, and they don't come out. And this is a problem that Rosenberg has in a few of his games. We were just talking about this in Hallertau. The luck of the card draw shouldn't be as strong as it is in this game, I think. I think as a solo game, I don't care. But with 2-player, I don't know. And this is all obscured of how ugly the whole thing is, so that's not helping me either.
So I think for me, what I appreciated about this game was about sequencing. And in fact, it reminded me of a much more complicated Reef. So Reef is all about sequencing. It's about the cards coming out randomly, but you're trying to figure out, based on the card that you have now, what you're going to do later based on what's in the lineup. And so for me, I felt like, sure, the cards are random, and sure, I could invest in canals, and maybe more canal cards won't come out for scoring. But I'm also investing in other things. And if I'm working on a card right now, and I see the card I want in the future, because it's a 2-player game and we're working on different stuff, the odds of Chris taking that, or the odds of you taking that from me, or whatever, are slim enough that I don't feel like we get in each other's way. And so I could be working on one thing, I could be eyeing something else, and I could say, okay, I'm going to work on that next. And I'm going to use this to help create that next part. Okay, let me go get that card, put it on my board. Now I'm working on both. So I feel like the sequencing is fun, and I feel like it's not an engine builder. We were talking about that. It's not an engine builder, but it looks like it should be a little bit. No, there's a little bit of a disconnect there, I think.
That I agree on. I think it's not an engine builder, and I also think when you said Reef, it's a very weird crossover, but it makes sense, right? And it's about, you're trying to activate each card twice if you can.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't think thematically it's useful to have 2 bridges attached to. Surrounding it is an easy thing. You're like, surrounding it. Attaching with 2 bridges, you got to be careful because you don't want to build an extra bridge you don't have to.
You have to get on and you have to get off. That's the way I see that.
I do run into, so my other main problem with the game is the discs and the choosing the action. So I get it. There's this stupid disc they say give to the other person to show that they're first. Then give them a pile of discs. So also they go first. That disc first place, I think they just had an extra disc that they want to put in the game. I mean, you literally hand a stack of discs to the person who goes first. They then move that stack, and now it's your turn. There's no confusion who's first.
There is, at the moment where you've laid everything out on the board, you're doing cleanup, there's that moment of like, who just played the last disc?
That I
could see it being there for.
It's just a first-player piece. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I wish that the disc thing, it sounds more interesting. It's just kind of worker placement, but one person has 3 and the other person has 2 in a round.
Right. But there's also only 7 places to go to.
Yeah, and so it does that little bit of a Rosenberg thing. I love the mechanism where the unused spaces get seeded with a little bit of juice, a little bit of extra.
With points.
Right.
Yeah.
With coins.
Did that ever make you go to a spot you wouldn't go to otherwise?
Yes.
At one point, Yeah, at one point, the most I've ever seen it in my game stack up to is 5 coins on a spot. And you're like, fine, I'll build some stupid paths, but also get 5 points out of it. That's only happened once.
It made me delay stuff significantly. If
Which
I
is
see,
sequencing.
yeah, it's all about that sequencing of like, hey, well, I need to get clay right now. That clay spot has no money on it, but I also could buy a card. I don't really want to get that card first. I would like to get the clay first, but I'm going to get the card because I'm going to get 3 extra points with it.
I guess but this leads to my biggest problem with that. This thing sounds really cool, but it doesn't really mean anything. It's not like a game where it matters like Istanbul.
It's not like that. The first thing when I pulled out the stack, Wendy asked me this, like, does the action strength depend on the stack? And I was like, no, because that would have been interesting.
Does the yellow circle do anything? No.
So anyway, the problem is it really bugs me that there's only 7 spots. And they're not even that different, except there's one that lets you build the railroads and the canals, and it is picked once you get like 4 rounds in the game. That spot is picked every turn because you need it.
Yeah.
So you know what gets it? The person who goes first. That's so boring.
But there's 2 canal spots. You just have to not get resources to get the second canal spot.
And this is weird coming from him because his spots are always so interesting. You play Caverna or Agricola, and there's like a plethora. I'm like, ooh, I could go there. Well, I want to do that one. Oh, I feel like there's some choices. Here I was like, I need to build something. That's the only spot open. I need wood. I guess I'll go here. And I found that part to be very boring, and I also didn't have time to look across the table at my opponent and see the nonsense that they're building because I can't read it upside down. It's just symbols and stuff. And I just hope it feels like I'm playing 2 solitaire games, other than that you took that spot. I won it, but I knew you were going to. And
I'm happy with this level of interaction. Like this, we get in each other's way a little bit on that board. We get in each other's way a little bit on that board. A lot of it is taking like, ooh, I wanted those 3 coins from that top row, you know, or I wanted the bridge. Like we're all going for the same stuff.
Yeah,
we want the good roads. We want the bridges. We want, you know, the resources. Sometimes they matter. Sometimes they don't. And later in the game, they don't. But to me, that's the type of interaction that I want. I want that, and then I want to be able to do my own little thing over here that you don't mess up.
I think for me, too much of this game is accidental. The interaction is more or less accidental, right? Oh, you went to that spot because it has 3 coins on it instead of 2, and you blocked the action I was going to do. And now I have to kind of, you know what I mean? That I don't love that. What I accomplish on my own board, it's a mix between accidental / incidental. This card happened to come up. I guess I can work with. I guess I'll build it. It's also worth 5 points, so that okay. I never feel like I'm building a great cohesive system. That being said, you do kind of accidentally build a good cohesive system because activating buildings gives you the resources that you need to afford the next building that kind of could sequence well with what you have going on. But I never go into that with a plan. And I think that people who are going to gravitate towards this game love that little bit more of the fly by the seat of your pants nature of it, because what you're building does give you a feedback loop. But I just don't think I have enough control over it, and also that everything along the way is not interesting enough to keep me entertained. I was bored about halfway through the last game of it that I played.
Yeah, I like the concept of the game. I'm giving it a 5 because there's things about it I do like. I like the idea of surrounding stuff, and by putting a road on one side or a railroad on one side, I'm also putting it on the other side of this card. That's interesting. But there's no theme. I mean, no theme. All these buildings come out, and maybe if I memorized all the decks, I still don't know the difference between A and B in this game.
No, we looked at them. There's not really a difference. I can't find an underlying theme between the A deck versus the B deck.
Right, so, and then there's 3 different colors, and I think they get better, they change slightly. So that confusion, and I don't want to make it sound like I was confused the whole time. I felt like I was playing the game, I understood the rules, but I didn't know if I was playing well. And that bugs me a lot. And honestly, this game's not made in a vacuum. And not even by this designer. And he has an amazing 2-player game in Fields of Arle. If you want to play a 2-player, I know it can go to 3 with the expansion. And almost all his other games play great with 2. Feast for Odin's great with 2. Caverna's great with 2. Le Havre is great with 2. I just don't know what this one brings. I'm not a huge Glass Road fan, but I think I like that better than this. This one, I just don't enjoy that much.
I'm giving this one, I thought really hard about this. I'm giving it a 5.5.
Ooh, I've never heard you do that before.
It sounds almost silly, right? But like for me, a 5 is a game that I'm almost like probably avoid. This one is, I'm almost there. I think that, as you said, you can't review 100% in a vacuum. If this game didn't, if Uwe Rosenberg didn't have what I consider to be an excellent, massive, heavy 2-player game in Fields of Arle, or like a big, thinky one, and also all of his small box ones that I think all flow really well. And
that's true.
A Great Law, All Creatures Big and Small is one of my favorite games because the unused spots build up in an incredibly interesting way.
Oh, that's true. Is this a bigger Caverna, whatever that small game was called?
Kind of feels like that, but not as well crafted, not as honed down to its best elements, and it's just not as developed feeling as I want it to be. Or it just doesn't speak to my taste of that kind of random nature of the cards and stuff coming out, the unpredictability. And I know that we made fun of it, and people always say, like, don't you feel bad making fun of this artist's work? I don't. Harold Lieske has done some much better looking games and some more approachable looking games, and I think that just the art direction on this just doesn't help. It really doesn't help that I'm not even a strong thematic gamer. I just look at this and I go, I guess I'll build a railroad because this card that I drew has a name that says something with a railroad, so it gets an extra 2 points because I built it next to a railroad. Like the art direction, the development, the design, it doesn't work together for me. So 5.5.
Okay, I'm going to give this a 7. I think that there is no theme, and I think the art is terrible, but those things are not detrimental to me for games. So putting out there, I think it's terrible. It looks like Industrial Revolution met 70s yellow, met 90s neon, muted. Yeah.
It has
so
a
anyways.
little yellow submarine thing going on.
It's very ugly. But actual gameplay I did really enjoy. I like that idea of sequencing. I think there's some clever things in there, being able to use those cards twice and connecting them up, getting the cards that if you're like, hey, I'm working on a card, this needs a railroad, I'm going to make sure that railroad go next to this other card that I see that I want. Okay, I'm working those two. When do I surround it? When do I put that final piece there so that I can make it fire off, so that I can maximize it to its potential? There's so many good questions about that organization. And so it's very much spatial mixed with sequencing. And those are two of my favorite mechanisms. And so I do very much enjoy this. I did feel like it stayed a little bit over its welcome. Like I was done about 8 cards across, and I was like, okay, I could be done. But I wasn't bored at the end of the game. I just felt like, hey, I did my cool thing. Now what do I do? Because I had a plan for those 8 cards.
Would you pick this over his other games?
I would not pick this over his other games. The thing is that I feel like this is more unique and different from a lot of his other games. Like I feel like Caverna and Agricola and those kind of games, they feel very similar. A lot of his games are very similar in their worker placement. Okay, I'm going to these spaces. And so I feel like this was a nice little sidestep if he's trying something new. And so I would pull this out. I would say, hey, this is a little bit different for an Uwe Rosenberg game. You still have the worker placement, but you're doing some different stuff over here. So I give it a 7. I liked it.
Well, there you go, folks. That's O Kanal. I'm just abbreviating for time purposes.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Anyhow, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Wendy Yee.
Man, that's a lot of yellow.